Hey, fabulous people. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, for logging in, for being a part of my love tribe. Today, I want to talk about trauma, identifying like what is trauma, what does it do to you, some impacts it may have, how to cope with it, and also, a very important spiritual step to take in order to you know, live moving forward. Because I think living moving forward is, what life is about, not constantly looking back and retracing steps um, within our memories and still living in that emotional soup. So before I get into that, don't forget to check the show more section. Don't forget to share, like my video if you do, but also subscribe to my channel. I do put out content that over 7 years now, I have been paid to deliver to some people. So I know that there's other people that probably have to pay to get this kind of one-on-one, and you're getting it right here on my channel completely for free. And yeah, as you can see, we're developing a much better setup. And in my next studio get together, we're going to have a panel of ladies and maybe even gents are going to join us. And we're going to talk about, do women get the respect they deserve? I'm going to go into some of those juicy topics. But today, let's talk about trauma. So, what is trauma? Um, and I'm sorry if I keep looking that way because my computer screen is over here and the camera's over here. So, trauma. It's very important that we identify and that we define words in a way to help us start to jot down what that is for us. However, humans have for a very long time created definitions for words that they keep redefining and they keep generalizing the definition, that it gets to the point that you don't know what something means anymore because everybody's so afraid to just say the truth. Trauma involves extreme emotional and physical moments and scenarios that negatively impact you mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. Trauma has to be severe emotional, severe physical scenarios in order for it to be traumatic. In order for it to be trauma, it has to be that. Trauma cannot be simple everyday life events. Like trauma is not, for instance, when you're younger and there's a breakup of a friendship or a relationship. That's not really trauma, because sometimes in life you have to break apart from people, or sometimes in life people are taken away from your life. That's not traumatic. Now, the events of the relationship or the events that led up to that breakup can be traumatic. So, I thought I had somebody trying to come in my room. So let's talk about then, what is trauma. Trauma is a severe emotional and mental and physical scenarios where you are um, severely impacted in a very negative way. It impacts you not just physically with scars and injuries, but it can impact you also physically in terms of how you move and how you interact in society, because it can make you an isolated person. So, acknowledging the definition of trauma is important. We need to not generalize it. We need to basically filter it and take the most purest definition of it, which has to do with something that is severe, not something that is minor. Some of the things that are not trauma, and people identify as trauma, for instance, is, someone using a particular word or term towards you. That's not traumatic. That's a very quick instance. Now, over a long period of time from the same person, if that's the environment you live in, then yeah, it can become traumatic. But if it's not the environment you live in 24/7, a here and there exposure is not traumatic. And why do I say this? And it probably sounds cruel. It's important that we have resilience within us. We can't walk through life with zero resilience and take every negative instance as traumatic. We're not going to be able to cope or deal with life. I mean, for crying out loud, life is not a bucket of roses, even for the best of people. So, resilience is important. In order to have resilience, you cannot observe trauma in such a generalized fashion. But nevertheless, Whatever has caused extreme emotional, physical, and mental damage to you, there are some ways to cope with that. I've been there. I've done some of this work to get over it. It has taken time. Trauma is not something that you can overcome in a few days. It's not something you can overcome in a few hours. It takes months and sometimes years. So if you're still in the process of overcoming a severe impact that was so negative to you, and you're wondering if it's taking too long, I'm here to tell you that it's not supposed to take a short time anyway, because whatever led up to that happening, it's almost like you have to reverse all of that. And that may take the same amount of time. If it took 7 years for you to realize you need to get out of something that was dangerous to you traumatically, it may take 7 years for you to recover from that. So let's talk about how do we start those steps? How do we start the step of dealing and processing trauma so we can move forward? We can love our life today, right? Love our life now. Love your life now. Acknowledge the trauma. And this is the part where people then will start to understand if to acknowledge the trauma means you're going to, with yourself, even, you don't have to acknowledge it to people, but with yourself, you're going to have to sit down and you're going to have to analyze, okay, well, this happened to me. um it made me feel this particular way. It also resulted in me getting physically injured, or it just resulted in me getting mentally just in such a negative space. When you start to pinpoint that by acknowledging it, you're able to identify, was it really traumatic, or am I just seeing this with an overly negative perspective? And I need to maybe be a little bit stronger. So, the acknowledging the trauma is not so much putting you face to face with this is what happened to you, and let's just just break down right now. It's really for you to be able to assess, is this trauma at its core, or is this just a negative situation I need to develop and apply resilience to? Um, I mean, uh, several years ago, I was in a situation that I thought would lead to a phase of life that would be beautiful. Um, I came to the realization after not even a couple of, it was a couple of months of just horrendous verbal, emotional, and also physical altercations, where I ended up realizing I had to acknowledge the trauma. While in the situation, I had to acknowledge it was happening with myself. I had to acknowledge it in order to get out of it, you know? Um, I'm not speaking from book smarts, and I'm definitely not speaking from psychology research. I'm speaking from also experience. Um, and even what I've experienced when it comes to clients I've coached, acknowledging the trauma allows you to take a step towards the solution quicker. So that's why it's so important. It's the first step. Acknowledging it is not to rub it in your face. It's not for you to feel bad. It's for you to realize what are some possible solutions, steps you could take, you know? So acknowledge the trauma. This way you can also co-relate it to the definition and understand if it's truly a trauma or is something that you have to be a little bit more stronger to deal with. Um, the next step in dealing with traumatic situations or events is to understand the impact. What does that mean, understand the impact? That means reflect on your life and reflect on the life of the people around you and notice how this has impacted your life. How has it impacted your friendships, your ability to socialize, your ability to be self confident? How has it impacted your ability to even be a parent? If you're a kid, how has trauma affected your ability to believe in a bright future? It's another thing that sometimes we don't talk about. We often talk about these terms and we get therapy for them and we only focus on the self. We don't realize that this could be something that's affecting our kids, you know? So, trauma, how does it impact me when it comes to envisions of my future? Does it give me anxiety and does it stress me out? Probably does if it's really harsh. Or does it simply make me feel bad in the moment? And you may say, well, how can I tell the difference? Because it'll make me feel bad in the moment and it'll also make me feel anxious for the future. Well, deep down, your gut pretty much always knows. If it's something that is leaving you unsettled and is leaving you with a sense of someone squeezing your stomach, it's definitely not a good space to be. And it's definitely an impact, it's having a physical impact on you. And the physical impact that it's having on you is obviously negative because it's not a comfortable feeling to feel like someone is squeezing your stomach. I remember when I was in the scenario I was talking about earlier, how I was basically in public and with family, kind of trying to hide it, kind of trying to mask it. But I always was left feeling like in my stomach when I went home, I was always left feeling as if someone was just squeezing my stomach, as if they were literally physically squeezing my stomach inside my body. That's the feeling I had. But I thought it was just me being nervous because I was just a grumpy person. And I was also maybe being a hypochondriac, or maybe I was being a control freak. That's kind of like what I was, believing. And also what the person was kind of expressing to me. So I thought maybe that's what that is, and I need to get over it. But once I started to realize the impact that the scenario was having with my family, with me as a parent, even with outside circumstances such as work and the confidence I had in myself, and just the goals I had for me that I was just not even thinking of anymore, I started to notice that yes, this that I am experiencing with this individual is a traumatic experience and I can't stay in it, you know? Now, the point in which you realize that and the point in which you find a solution, that may take time also. It's not like people just realize something's difficult and poof, just get out, or poof, just make a move. An individual going through a trauma and kind of trying to navigate those waters, it may take one individual more time than the other. It doesn't mean that they don't want a solution. It just takes more time. Um, so now let's talk about after you've analyzed and assessed the impact it's had, right? What should you do next? Well, next you need to express your feelings. You need to express your feelings, whether it be with yourself, express your feelings. For me, it became expressing my feelings in prayer. Prayer really has helped me find a balance, a balance between my limbic and my frontal lobe in my brain. And that balance has allowed me to move through life in a super peaceful way, in a zen-like way where it's almost as if there are things that bother me, but they don't get to the point of stressing me out where my stomach feels tight anymore. I don't feel that anymore. But that came after 7 years of things that I've lived, right? And a horrible traumatic experience of my life, unrelated to something else, because in the meantime of going through something like that, I also was experiencing a separate situation, which was just as equally as traumatic. But I'll leave that example and story for another day, maybe for another coaching session. I'm using myself primarily because I don't want to inadvertently say the name of a client I've worked with because that might happen. But I may put in nuggets of my experiences with people that I've had over the course of these years that has helped me also understand trauma better and how people deal with it and how they justify it in their mind. Um, so expressing your feelings, that would be the third thing on my list. Express your feelings, express them in prayer, express them in writing. Journaling is another one. It's actually the fourth on my list here. So express your feelings. Talk to someone. If you can't do therapy, talk to someone. I'm pretty sure everyone has people in their circle you can reach out to. If not, there will be someone there the moment that you make the move to want to talk to someone about it. Take advantage of the friends and friendship connections you have and, seek help in that manner. If you can't do the therapy route, if you can't hire a life coach, for instance, but talk to someone, express your feelings. It took me expressing my feelings. And you might say, well, why do I have to do that if I'm in a safe space and I've already gone through that? I've made the move, I've made the step to like fix, remedy the traumatic scenario. The reason why you need to express yourself is because the verbalizing what happened to you and verbalizing how it makes you feel or how it's made you feel, putting it out of your chest in words, the vibration that causes in your body. It is a stress reliever, a pain reliever, and it is a spiritual reliever. It relieves you. It makes you lighter. You have to do that. Even if it involves you saying it in prayer to God or in meditation, just saying it with yourself. It is a way of releasing the energy of that event, releasing the energy of those feelings, of those vibrations. And it's so important because your spirit needs to have that vibration out. And sometimes saying those words, expressing your feelings with words, allows you to also unleash the tears that have needed to come out. You know, crying does not make an individual weak, crying makes an individual resilient. See, society has you believing that crying and tears are for weak people and that only the weak cry. And if you're a man, for instance, you shouldn't cry. This is a topic I need to have next time I have men on my panel. Men shouldn't cry. It's such bogus. Crying is what makes an individual resilient, you know? Jesus cried on the cross. He cried before going to cross. As a matter of fact, he cried so hard, he cried tears of blood and sweat beads of blood. Crying is normal. Joseph cried when he realized his family, his brothers had come back to him and were basically thinking that after everything that happened, they still had to behave the same way with Joseph, that it still was no trust. They were still treating him as if, Joseph would, enact a revenge on them. And this is Joseph from the Bible. And Joseph cried because he th- he just cried because he didn't think that his family, his brothers would still think that, would still hold that, and then still think that he would have the same desire to do that back to them. He cried, you know, but that even after all of that, he still forgave them. So tears make you resilient. Crying and expressing your feelings makes you resilient. It makes you resilient to the damage that's trying to be done to you because you're able to release it. You're able to release the negativity. So expressing your feelings is not about being weak and being babied and wanting to be coddled by someone. Expressing your feelings has everything to do with releasing the vibration, the negative energy vibration that needs to be released from your spirit because of obviously the traumatic situation going on. um I remember for quite some time, and I say I remember, but I'll admit, I've been living a life that has had me very independent and very solo, very much in solitude. And I have always tried to admit and accept that that's probably the best way, and it's what life and what God has for me. But as of recent, within the past couple of months, I would say actually this year, this 2023 has been the year where I have pretty much released and expressed my feelings when it comes to solitude and the truth of how I feel about independence, or being independent, an independent woman. Yeah, it's all great, but it's not cupcakes and sprinkles. You know, it's not the way that the society colors it. Um, they groom a lot of us to believe that independence and self righteousness and self love and putting yourself first is what life is all about. But if you're not a very resilient person, that can leave you feeling extremely lonely, you know? But my feelings in relationship to that weren't about the loneliness. They were primarily about the fact that I don't want to live in that hypocrisy anymore. I don't feel like that is truly what is good for me anymore. And so I've prayed about it tremendously. I've put it out in the open. Putting it out in the open alleviated my chest. I felt an immediate alleviation just from expressing that in prayer, verbally. Not even like wanting a solution or an immediate outcome. No, just expressing it, just letting it out there. It's you being truthful also with with the universe. That is so important. You can fake it till you make it all you want. But if your spirit doesn't admit the truth that it's living and ask for help or admit that it needs something to be different, then I'm sorry. Fake it till you make it is only going to squeeze your neck more and more every single day, and until you get to the point where then yes, you do start to feel like life can be traumatic. So express your feelings, journal it. If you can't say it or saying it is not enough, journal it. Journaling is a great thing. It doesn't mean write a diary, but it definitely means, and this is something I carry with me all the time. I have a little book. I have several of these. I write down my thoughts when I get, emotional, spiritual, empathy downloads. I write them down because a lot of times I get information and insights that I don't even know where they come from, and I just write them down. So journaling has definitely helped me channel that, save some of that work that I'm not always on a device typing or texting. So journaling is great. Journaling is also better than putting it into a device. Why? Because when you journal, again, it is the act of writing. You are releasing the energy of those words with a physical act that takes a lot more effort than typing somewhere. you know um Also, devices have other distracting things that come up, so you may be distracted from what you're writing, and then it ruins the entire flow. Whereas writing in a notebook, there's nothing else distracting you. So journaling is super important. I advise it to everyone, every single client I've had. I've always had them do a journal, or I've done it for them, like, because sometimes they struggle having to write down their stuff. I do it for them, but usually I always want them to write stuff down, because it's more of a way of them being able to physically see what they are mentally experiencing, what they are mentally feeling is also very important, you know. Um, then develop coping strategies. What does that mean? How do I cope? For me, you know what a great coping strategy was for me in times of like trying to heal from a traumatic, abusive situation? The best coping strategy for me was to just watch stand up comedy. Stand up comedy was a really coping strategy. Any kind of stand up comedy. I have my favorites, but I'm not going to say them here because you could have your favorites. But stand up comedy really helped. Uh, Listening to happy music, listening to classical music definitely helped me. Worship music also helped me. Um, Another coping strategy I had, that enabled me to understand the impact the trauma had on me: spending quality time with my loved ones. Just my family being available to spend quality time together. I don't care what we could be doing, a road trip or just nothing, watching a movie. Conversation that leads to always someone joking about someone else in the group, and we have a big blast of a laugh. Coping strategies that revolve around you being able to just experience love from your loved ones is enough, is all you need. If you don't have that, I'm sure you have a group of friends that feel like family for you. You have to take advantage of that network when it comes to love. We shouldn't take advantage of people when it comes to things and when it comes to material gain, but we should take advantage of one another when it comes to love. What does that mean? We should not hold back from expressing love. It should be unconditional. It is a hard term. I understand not everybody knows how to practice it. But if you start practicing loving another person as they are, eventually you start to learn how to apply unconditional love a little bit better. You may not do it to perfection because you're not, a saint, and you're not a god, but you may apply it better. And it's way better to be able to apply and practice unconditional love to an extent than to not practice it at all. you know Revel and savor um smaller moments for coping. Taking yourself out for something, like take yourself out for a coffee. um Take yourself out to watch a movie you really would love to watch with nobody else. um to get over trauma, since you experienced it by yourself with that individual, or in that scenario you experienced the trauma yourself. It will take coping strategies that are customized to yourself. Other people may not be involved. Other people may not have to be involved. So also be okay with that. Don't think you're in it by yourself. You truly are not. But when it comes to coping from trauma, some steps by yourself may be needed. And don't feel like that's an insane thing. It's quite normal, because your brain, your mind needs that time, needs that activity also within itself. The next item I have when it comes to coping, or dealing, I should say, with trauma, and what it is, right? Set boundaries. Have set boundaries, and you don't have to say, don't verbalize the boundaries. You don't have to tell people your boundaries. You don't have to let someone that's getting close to you know what your boundaries are. Just set boundaries with yourself, know what they are, and behave with people according to your boundaries, not according to how they want and what they expect, but according to your boundaries. It may involve you sometimes saying yes to things and then saying, and then choosing not to go. That's okay. Because maybe you said yes because you felt like it could happen. It would be something you would like, but you've changed your mind because deep down, you never wanted to do something like that. So just go back and say, no, it's fine. Okay. People that are truly meant to be in your life, people that are truly meant to love and appreciate you, they're not going to be thrown off by your boundaries. They're going to be loving towards your boundaries. Another reason why setting boundaries is important is you start to build a confidence with yourself that you're committed to yourself. That commitment to yourself is more important than fulfilling commitments with other people. What do I mean? Well, over the summer, I had an invitation to go to a seminar and to go speak at this particular seminar in with this mindset coach in Los Angeles. They invited me. It was going to be a couple of weeks in I think it was July. Yeah, it was July because it was before I got back to work in August. And it sounded like a great opportunity, and I really was down for it. But something else I was also doing that I had committed myself to, that I had expressed to myself I was going to do it and it was going to start at this time, was my podcast. Now I know right now it's such a minimal channel. It's something so minor. It's not that big of a deal yet, but for some people that are watching, it's a big deal. Some people like to hear my messages and some people write to me and thank me for what I release up there. And some people come to me in person because I just know them personally. And they really like the accessibility of being able to hear this and stop it and play it, as many times as they need. Um, well, that invitation was great, but I remembered what I had promised myself, and I had to call back my friend that had set this up, and I had to reject it. And the opportunity is there for next summer. I rejected it, and then she wanted to know why. And I said, well, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to release this podcast. I was going to start working on this, try to put it together. It's a tough time for me, yes, but I am going to make it work because I promised myself this, and I cannot break a commitment I set with myself. So that's a boundary. You see, I set a boundary. I was not going to break my own commitment to fulfill something else for another individual just because she's my friend and she wanted to have me there as a speaker. You see? So it took me saying no, even though the offer was great. And usually in life, when something is about to be really good for you, that you're committed to do something, is when you'll be offered something else. And you have to decide to stick to your commitment to yourself before you take any other offer. Don't sell yourself to something else if you're committed to something for you. Do the one for you first. It's okay. So setting boundaries is important. You don't have to tell the people this. For instance, if you don't like inconsistency, let's say you have an issue with inconsistency, right? What does that mean? I don't like people that are hot and cold, or I don't like situations where it's a yes and no. Inconsistency bothers me. I don't necessarily have to verbalize that. I don't have to cause a quarrel over that. I don't have to even bombard a connection or people or family, or I have relatives that love to do this also. They'll agree to a time and then they don't show up at that time. That's inconsistent, because if they want something done, they want me there at that time and I better be there, right? So that's inconsistent. um I don't do any of that. There's a boundary I already have set that I know myself, and that boundary is, when inconsistency happens, I just do a retreat. I just stay silent. Silence is a way to maintain peace. You maintain peace with yourself, you maintain peace with the other person, peace in situation. You're not being passive. That's not what I mean. You're being peaceful. You're not turning that into a problem, because inconsistency today, tomorrow, when you have a little bit more information, you may understand better why it happened. And everything is meant to happen a particular way anyway, according to universal laws, right? So inconsistencies are there for a reason. Perhaps you needed that extra time. Perhaps that person was delayed for some other reason, they would have gotten into a crash. Or perhaps a distraction happens from someone so you can learn about them, that if they get distracted easily, then how are they going to ever have priorities that they focus on in their life? You see, so it allows you to learn and it allows you to understand, as opposed to just quarreling and causing war with your loved ones, which is always something I say try to stay away from. And if you have to have a boundary where you walk out from arguments or you just take a time out from arguments, just do it in a loving way. Just let the person know, I love you, I'm here for you, but I need a couple of minutes to process everything and we'll resume this later. Okay? You have to have boundaries to make your mind healthier, especially after trauma. Um, and my last two, which are so valuable to me, practice self compassion and practice self forgiveness and forgiveness in general. So, what does that mean? Self compassion. Be compassionate with yourself. Don't be hard on yourself that you acted a way that now, looking back, I would never have done that. I would have never accepted that. Okay. But today you have revelations that you didn't have 10 years ago. You didn't have 7 years ago. You didn't have yesterday. Today you have knowledge that you didn't have 5 years ago. You have it today. But be compassionate. You could not make a decision 5 years ago based on information you got 5 years later. You can't decide, you couldn't have. It's impossible. You're not a time traveler. So be compassionate. You did the best you could. And the best you could was that. Did you get out of the situation? Did you come to a solution? Did you salvage something or someone? Look at that. Uh, Why look at that? Because those are the positives. You were able to move in a way that solved and got you out of the trauma. Those are positives, but be compassionate. Don't be hard on yourself that it took place and you were so stupid and I'm so dumb. Because for a long time I did. I thought I was like so stupid, so ridiculous. I never want to associate with another individual again. I never want to have anybody close to me again, emotionally. Never, ever. Intimately, emotionally, nothing. Zero. But you know what? When I started practicing self-compassion, I started to realize I couldn't have moved differently. I did the best I could based on the information I had, and also based on how culture made me believe how I was supposed to move based on the certain echelons I should have achieved already. So I forgave myself when I realized that I had to be compassionate based on what I did. I did the best I could. So I enacted some self forgiveness by realizing I could not have made decisions based on revelations I have today. I made decisions based on what I knew then, and it was the best I could do. Self forgiveness and forgiveness in general. That's my last point when it comes to trauma. It allows for you to finally wash away energetically from yourself whatever can hold you back with feelings of resentment and revenge. Resentment and revenge are not going to give you the results that you're looking for. Because, first of all, you're not powerful, universally speaking, to enact any kind of revenge that will make you feel like that person suffered a karma they deserve based on the trauma they gave you. It's not worth it. It's a waste of your time. Instead of focusing on your forward, you're focusing on staying backwards, back there where the trauma happened with the people involved and doing some revenge, and you have resentment with them and you have a hard time letting go. It's time to let go. Letting go is a sign that you are not only forgiving yourself, but it's also a sign you're starting to forgive the other person. Forgive them. They also don't know what they are doing. They don't understand either. And maybe they're a different person today than they were 10 years ago or 5 years ago. Forgive them because they do not understand what they do. It's a biblical concept, but it needs to be applied in a universal setting by everybody. Anyway, I'm going to stop here because in a little bit the bell's going to ring and I have to get back on task to the wonderful job I do here with amazing, amazing teens. I love you for watching. I hope some of this content has helped you. I hope some of what I shared has helped you. And yes, I will be doing additional series or episodes, I should say, on how to handle trauma because it's so important and impactful to each and every one of us. And I do know that every single person goes through some part or some experience that is traumatic for them. And I will share some more experiences related to my story that will help you understand that trauma really is a confirmation of the resilience you're meant to have and the amazing, strong spirit you're here to be. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. Don't forget, be a part of the tribe and subscribe. I'm waiting for you. Anyway, DM me, message me. You can find me on Instagram at lovetribe143. I hope to see you there. And if not, I'm so happy to see you here. Bye.